Hey guys, in this video we're going to show you how to assemble the kits to your board. We're going to explain all the 3 different kits. So just look for the time underneath and skip it to the kit that you got. So you need to watch the whole video. So let's start it. Okay, before we start, I suggest to grab some boxes so you can put your empty boxes, for example, like here. So you can put all different screws inside and you don't lose them. First thing we need to do, we need to remove the deck. Just simply removing these N5 countersunk. So let's do that. Usually it's a good idea to start from this and then remove from the reef nut. At this point, you remove it as a cross. Okay, once it's done, we can remove the deck. And we put this on the side. If you don't have a new deck, you got to cut it, but we'll explain this at the end of the video because it will be pretty much the last thing you have to do. So let's put this away now. Okay, the next thing we want to do, we want to disconnect the front and rear bulkhead to the main chassis. To do that, we need to remove 8 screws, 2 on this side, 2 on this side, 4 underneath. If you do have lights, disconnect the lights now. It will make your life easier later. And also you need to disconnect the motors. So to disconnect the motors, there is a plate with 4 screws here. Disconnect this. Okay, at this point, disconnect the motors. So the motors has 2 connectors, one big yellow connector, this one here, and a small multicolor wire with a flat white connector, which is this one here. Disconnect this, the right and the left, and then you disconnect all the lights from the PCB. Don't worry about which connector goes to which connector, because we will put new lights anyway. Okay, at this point, I have disconnected everything that comes from the front and everything comes from the back. So what we want to start doing is removing the screw that I was talking before. Might be quite a bit of a Loctite in here, thread locker. So maybe a good idea is to start doing by hand, break the Loctite like that, and then do it with a drill bit if you're not confident. I'm going to go and do it straight from this, but it's a good idea always start it with by hand and then do it with the drill. I'm going to put this on a different box. Okay, now we need to remove the 4 underneath. Easiest thing probably is to flip the board upside down. Maybe just grab a little cardboard box, put underneath so the battery doesn't fall. 2 boxes. I'm going to put it roughly like that and then turn around. Okay, this point, disconnect. In here previously there was some silicone, so it might be a little bit hard to pull it out, but if you just move a little bit. And also the gasket might be still stuck to the bulkhead, as you can see. One bulkhead. 2 bulkhead. Okay, this point, we'll flip this again. As you can see, we have all the internal, which is going to stay exactly as it is. So you don't need to touch anything from the inside. We can put these on the side. So at this point, we have these boxes with the battery and everything inside. You don't need to touch anything in here. The only thing you need to do at this point is grab your kit. Depending on the kit that you choose, just skip to the time code and the bar. So in this way, you don't need to watch the whole step. If you have kit 1, we'll start from here. So let's put this away. For kit 1, what we need to take out of the front is a few things. Starting from the shock, the upright or knuckle, spacers, a few little things like, for example, the rods, some screws, and things like that. You can reuse, for example, shoulder bolt or the bushings inside the swing arms, but you don't really need that because it will come already with it. So, but keep all this stuff because you might need it in the future as a spare parts. So let's start removing the shock. You use a 12 or 13, depends on the batch this was built, and a 4X, and you're just gonna loose like that. Now, it might be that there is a lot of thread lock inside here, so if you have a flame, probably it will be easier for you to use a bit of flame. Warm up on the screw, and then try to lose it. If you put a lot of pressure, a lot of force, and you feel like it's not coming, probably it's a good idea to use the flame. So I'm going to put on a different box all the screw that I take out of for the assembly of the bulkhead. Like in this case, this is stuck, was stuck there. It's just because there was a bit of thread locker that was keeping it in place there. Kind of like glue it, but you can always remove it. Let's do the other one. Like in this case, put a bit of pressure. It doesn't really come. I'm not going to risk it and strip it. So I'm just going to use a bit of flame. That's probably enough. There we go. And it comes in very easy. If you see a little dust coming off, again, that's a thread locker. Nothing to be worried. As you can see, I had to push it. This point, probably the easiest thing to do is to remove pressure to the preload, just because otherwise the suspension is always in compression. So it'd be hard to push these out because it's always trying to do this. So let's just remove preload, completely remove preload from the suspension. This should be enough. And at this point, you can grab anything that will go inside there, and with a little hammer. Okay, at this point, you can grab like a pin or something that will go inside. Make sure it goes all the way in, doesn't just touch the thread. Otherwise, when you gentle push these out, it will damage the thread. Okay, one it came out. And the other one came out as well. Put it there. At this point, you can try to slide this out, but it might still be quite hard. The reason is because this is still keeping in place. So what we want to do, we want to remove this too. You need to remove completely. You just need to lose it. So you need to use 2 4X or 2 4 Allen key. So 1 Allen key, 1 socket. Usually just one, the 2 comes off. I'll show you a trick how to remove both of it. At this point, you just need to make one looser. You can see how this came off pretty easy. So let's put this on away. And okay, we put that away. Now we need to take the knuckles or upright out of these or the chassis. We do the exact same thing. So we grab our 12 and the 4mm Allen key. This case was a lot easier. I didn't need to use a flame. Put these away. Push these out. And same thing, these, just push it down. You have 2 taper washers. Do not lose this because you need to use this. So these 2, they are conical. I'll show you again how to install them. But if you're not sure, just take a picture and you have to install it exactly the same way. But anyway, the skinny part has to face inside. Do the same thing for this side. Again, this was easy. We push these out again. Okay, for example, in this case, it's a little bit stuck. It's actually stuck because of the thread locker that is keeping the stuck. So again, grab a little bit of flame. Try this again. This point again, push this down. Conical washers that will fall, not a problem. Keep the pentagons. There's a pin as well. Remove the pin. Then there is a spacer, little ring. Remove this as well. And then you can push this out. You don't really need to do this, but it's a good idea, so at least you don't lose parts as you're working on it. Same thing for this. You can just push this out. Okay, beautiful. At this point, if you have KIT 1, you have to reuse these rod ends. So in this case, we need to remove them. So probably the easiest thing to do is remove from the bulkhead. So you grab a 10 mil and the same 4. Now, this long M6 by 35 screw, kind of sunk, we're not going to use it, so you can just put it back in there if you want to keep the washer. This is one of the things that we're not going to use for the Atrax conversion kit, so I usually just put it back in there and put on the side for spare parts, you never know. And then we do the other side. Okay, now what we're going to do, we can remove the knuckle underneath. We won't need to use this, but we will need this, so it's a good idea to keep it all in the same attach it to it, so at least you don't lose them for now, because the rest then we can put it away. Now, let's remove the knuckle. These things, again, is just to put it upside down. Now we need to remove this here. Because this will rotate as you try to unscrew it, it will be pretty hard to hold it. We'll suggest probably to do this first before removing this part. If you have to remove it, just put back the hex bolt in here and then grab some flame. And you can point it actually very close also to the rod end. We won't use the rod end again for the Atrax. We don't need it. So even if you put a lot of heat in there, don't worry, we're not going to use it. Beautiful. Now let's try it. Also this, we're not going to use any of this stuff. So again, don't worry if this gets a bit hot or you damage it in the process. Not important. Let's put this away. I'll grab another box. We can put the bigger parts. It's hot. Cut there. Okay, let's do the other side. Same thing. Put this hex bolt through. Just make your life easier. Beautiful. Same thing. Put a bit of heat. Just because these will have a lot of Loctite. Should probably put it like this. Obviously, these will be warm. Again, you're not going to use that, so don't worry. Put this back in its place. Put this with the other one. Now, out of this, the only last thing we need to take is these spacers for now. You can do it at the end. Usually these, I like to put it right at the end just because it is easier, just a little part. You don't lose it as well as this stuff. So I'm just going to put this away and I'm going to start working on the rear. Okay, here we have the rear. What we have to do essentially here, it's the same thing as we did for the front, but a little bit more, obviously, because we need to save the motors as an example. Okay, so let's start with removing the suspension. This might be also a little bit dirtier, obviously, because it's the rear. If you really use it, my hands are quite dirty, so it doesn't matter. Might be a good time to put some gloves. Okay, grab your 4mm. Put it with the same screw that I put it for the bulkhead. Okay, this is not coming off. Again, use a bit of torch. Okay, it's coming off, but it's still pretty hard, so I've got to keep it a bit longer. It's just better to keep the torch instead of trying to strip in the screw. It's just a safer option, because then if you strip there, it would be much harder to remove it, and you can't really reuse the screw. There we go, much easier. Okay, I'm going to replace the screw just because it does look a little bit stripped. We might put it in the kit, some extra screw, but this is still good. Okay, same thing as for the front. Remove the suspension, remove the compression, preload compression. 1. This was a lot easier, just because it's still warm. 2. Then, as you can see, this is not coming off. So again, let's lose this a little bit. You need to completely remove it. There you go. 1. 3 coming off. See, this is not coming off still yet. Easy. Put this away. Great. Now, what we need to do is I'll probably start this time from the removing this part, instead removing this first, just because it's easier to remove these screws after, underneath. So let's remove this. 10mm socket, 4mm Allen key. Put this away, put this nut back in, exactly the same way as the front. Okay, do the same thing for the other side. Put the nut back. Beautiful. Now, these are free. Let's remove this underneath. So let's flip it over. Let's grab the 5mm X. No, okay. Then we need to use the flame. In this case, do it from the top, just because you've got a boot under there, so you don't want to damage the boot with the flame. So, as I said, do it from the top. You're not going to use this screw, you're not going to use that rod anyway, so you'll be fine. Okay, you can lift this up to this side. Okay, and at this point, we want to remove this again from the knuckle. So we can take the knuckle and the drive shaft out. Put it like this. Grab your 4mm X again, 12mm socket. Push this out. Grab the taper washers. Grab the zip tie. This point, put the gloves because you're going to work with grease. So place it under your hand and put this in the same box as you did for the front. 1 and 2. Grab the zip tie and remove this as well. Now, the drive shaft will come new, but you can reuse the cap and anything connected to the boots and anything else. But this, it's not. It's too short now. The new Atrax is going to be longer. So, but for now, put this on the side and we'll work this separately. Now, the last thing you need to do here is to take the motor out. You don't need to take any of the transmission out because there is no ball belt, and the pulley and the big pulley or the small pulley tensioner bearings, you need none of the stuff anymore. So at this point, we will just remove the motors. So grab the 5mm. I'm going to use a longer extension to remove these heats. So I need to grab this one. Let's do the opposite, actually. Now, if you have a bash plate, like in this case, it's probably easier to flip around and actually remove the bash plate. You already remove this from the box. You need to remove these two. Let's just do that. This is the same screw as we use for the deck, so I'm going to put it with the deck screw. Save these little washers. I don't think we need it after. You can see if you're stuck like this, it's just a bit of a thread lock. Just push it out. Okay, and at this point, let's remove the motors. This is better for everyone to see what I'm doing. Okay, one. No. I'm going to try and do it with the drill. This screw, we don't need it, so I'm just going to put it away on a different box. Okay. Always first do it by hand. To start, this shouldn't be Loctite. In the custom, put Loctite. You don't put Loctite for this. Okay. Okay, at this point, you can remove the motor. Once you remove the 3 screw, there is a hole there. You slide the cable out of the hole. You can see it's empty. Here is this hole. Now, what you can do at this point, you can put this back in there. You need to put it all the way in. Okay, one motor is off. Put it here on the side for now. Let's remove the motor. So same thing, just break that Loctite by hand. Okay, beautiful. And now do it with the drill. Okay, I'm going to show you from here. Slide these out, and this is done. Put this on the side. The belt, we don't need it, so I just put it back in there, and then I put this back in. Beautiful. Out of these for now, we don't need anything else. Same thing as for the front. We need to take this spacer out. You can reuse the light. You can plug this light as it was before. You can the back light. You can't really reuse the indicators. There is no hole for putting the indicators there. But if you don't have the light, you can definitely use this. It actually looks quite nice, these little dots in the new board. Much better than the old one. Okay, let's put this away. Again, you can keep these as spare parts. You can't really use any of these arms, but you can definitely reuse all these color washers. You can reuse all these shoulder bolts. You can reuse some of the screws, different screws. These stepper washers, if you have lost any, there's 2. Anyway, we'll go through later. Now, what we need to do is remove the pulley, because we want to reuse the motors. The motors do good, but the motor plate and the pulley, we can't really use it. So let's grab the box where we put the things that we can't use it. There is a grab screw that you need to remove inside the motor. It's not sure if you can see, but it's in there. So you grab an Allen key and you try to remove it. Now, usually if you try to do it straight away, you might strip it. So I usually don't even attempt to give it a little bit. If you feel like it's not coming, don't even try to give it too hard, because this you can strip pretty easily. It's pretty small. So what we do, grab our trusty flame again. Just make sure that you point out of the wiring here. Even if you damage the pin here, don't worry, you're not going to use it. As I said before, you're not going to use this as well. So the shaft, we're not going to use the shaft. We've got some new shaft that you have to install. So be generous with the flame, pretty much. Okay, let's try. Let's give it a go. Yeah, much easier. You need to remove the grab screw completely. You just need to loosen it up, just enough for these to come out. Usually a few turns will be enough. Now in this case, it's still quite tight into shaft. So what we want to do, we grab a flat screwdriver and we try to pull that up. Flat screwdriver. Again, don't worry about the paint. You're not going to use this. There we go. Now, this, we're not going to use it. I'm going to put it in the box of part that we're not going to use it. Motor is still really good here. At this point, we remove the 4 M4 screws. As I said before, always start by hand. We grab our 3 millimeters X. This is already good. Yeah, that's good. That's good. That's good. Is lift. At this point, we will reuse this M4 screw, but we won't use this. So let's put this away. And let's put this in one of these boxes, in that one there. So here's the motor. Beautiful, still perfect, this motor. We'll put it on the side. We'll do this one as well. I'm going to give it a go to see if I can remove the grab screw. No. Okay. Same thing as before. Okay. I did a quarter turn, probably half a turn. What is this? Yeah. This case came out pretty easy. There's a key here you need to also remove. Put it in the parts that we're not going to use it. And then we'll lose it. Again, these 4. Beautiful. And then I can do with the drill. Again, we'll take the 4 screw, which we will use it later, and 4x10 socket head, and we'll put this away. We won't use this. Spin the motor, spin beautiful, really well taken care of. And now we will put these things away. We don't need this anymore. M3, flathead. What we need to do next is we need to remove the shaft, because the shaft that we are going to use for the gear drive is a D design. So it looks like a half a moon. So what we need to do, first we need to pull apart the cap or the rotor to the stator. To do so, there is a circlip over there that you need to pull apart, pull up, and then pull this apart. Okay, this is a Circlip Remover. You can see it has, when you press, it actually opens. This is for outside shaft. So you put in the 2 holes, pull apart, lift it up. We will definitely keep using this. I'm going to leave it there because I'm going to put it back pretty quickly. And then there is also a washer, usually pretty small. In this case over there, if it falls out, make sure you reinstall this as well. At this point, you can pull this apart. It will be a little bit hard just because the magnets want to stay inside in the coil. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to grab on the cable, but don't try to pull too much from the cable. Try to hold also from the stator, this part here. You can see it turns. So as you can see, I'm holding a little bit from there and holding stator as well. At this point, you pull, and it comes apart. There is this washer. Make sure you don't lose it. Put it there. At this point, you leave this there, and you do the same thing for the other one. Put this there. Same thing, pulling. And this like that. Okay. At this point, you can put the coil, the stator on the side. It's a good time to test the bearings to make sure the bearings are good, are pretty good, these bearings, but it's a good time to just give a spin here and feel like they're not good, because if they're not, just replace them. It's a good thing to do anyway. Okay, at this point, what we need to do, we need to remove, there is 3 screws here at the back. We need to remove these 3. We need to grab back the Allen key that we had before. If there is a bit of dirt, like in this case, just give a clean, because these are pretty small and they're also quite easy to strip if you don't put them straight all the way in. So with something small, just make sure everything is clean. Very important step this to follow. At this point, do not even attempt to try to remove it. You will strip there. Again, they're very small, very easy to strip. So what you do You grab your flame. So as you can see, I'm just loosening it for now, as they're still hot. And then after they are all three loose, you can probably easily remove the rest. You'll see there is a lot of thread lock in there, residual. Just blow it out. Okay, at this point, we want to push this out. Let's move this out the way. Grab a rubber hammer like this. Don't use a steel one just because inside there's magnet, and when you push it in, it might just stuck to the magnet and you might damage the magnet. So use a rubber one. And one is out. Okay, to the other one, same process. Use a lot of flame. This is already clean. And when you remove it, just put a bit of pressure and keep the pressure. Don't increase the pressure, just put a bit of pressure, increase the pressure, and as the heat gets through the thread locker, it will actually come loose by itself. So don't put more pressure, just like put a bit of pressure, and as the heat comes through, it will come off like that. See? I'm not adding more heat, force. This will be easier than the other two, the other three. By the way, the magnets can survive up to 180 degrees. So this is not going to damage the magnets. Just give a clean to the residual of the thread lock, like what I'm doing. Just blow it, or even if you've got some gloves, just clean like that. Same thing I did before. Tap it out. And that's it. Now, this shaft, we can't really use it, so you can put it on the side, leave our spare parts, I guess. So we put it in the box with the parts that we can't use. Okay, now, at this point, we want to put the new shaft. So let me grab it. In this case, it's a small motor. So there is a small shaft. So at this point, what we do, ideally, you want to, there is 3 holes here and 3 holes on there, which where this screw goes. It's ideal to try to align before we push it in, just because it will get a bit hard. It's still possible to do it after, but I'm just going to do like that. It will be a little bit tight. It's normal. You might have to, like the last bit, you might have to do it with the hammer. Just double check again that this is aligned. If they're not, just use the half a moon. I'm going to show you actually the difference. So this is a half a moon that is got a keyway. Okay, at this point, let's just try to put this in. Yeah, this is it's a little bit off. So I found it a little bit easier if you just push it back out and realign a little bit. Okay, so after you have installed the shaft to the motor, what you need to do is you need to grab the 3 screw that you removed previously, put a little tiny drop of red thread locker, the one that was sent with the board originally, and then put it back in. Now, when you do that, make sure that obviously the 2 holes of the shaft and the motor caps are aligned. If they're not aligned, it's not going to go in easy. And also make sure that you put it all the way in the shaft correctly. And when you tight the 3 screw, they are all 3 evenly tight to the shaft. The reason is that because you don't want to after have as the motor is spinning, the cap doing this, because these are not securely connected to it. So that's very important. Make sure it's aligned, the 2 holes, and make sure the shaft is compressed all the way in, and the 3 screw are tight. Okay, now let's put the caps back into the motors. We've done everything. To do that, it's pretty simple. Put the shaft through the motor. Make sure that you hold the caps, because the magnet will try to want it to go in pretty quickly. So as you put it in, put it like that, and then you can hold onto the cables. Beautiful. Make sure you spin it. Make sure that everything is fine. Do the same thing here. This cable wants to go under there. Again, I'm just kind of slowly. You can see. Let's see. Okay. Gonna do this again. Okay. If in this case I feel like it's a little bit too close, I'm going to put the spacer, instead of put it over here, I'm going to try and put it there at the back. It doesn't really matter where it is. Okay, much better. I could feel before it was a little bit too close. It might be that this shaft, it wasn't all the way in, or it's normal. It's normal. Also, brand new shaft does the exact same thing. So at this point, I need to put back the Circlip, and I'm going to put on this on, obviously because here I already used from the inside, so the shaft is moving a little bit more out. We're not going to put a spacer in there, but we're going to put it on this one because I didn't put it inside. Okay, now we need to put back the Circlip. So just put it inside the two holes, open, put it in, and then push it in with something. And sometimes it clicks, sometimes it doesn't. This time it didn't click. Put it in like this. Then with something, anything, doesn't need to be an Allen key, just push it in. Let's see if it clicks. There you go. It clicked, it's in place. Now, let's put this on the side. And at this stage, we don't need this anymore. We can start assembling the gear drive. Okay, at this point, you can start grabbing the new parts. So here is the rear. Most likely will come already assembled with the top and the bottom arms. In this case, it's a little bit easier also for the camera to show what's happening, how everything's going to be installed. So I haven't installed this just yet, but pretty much you have the back and you have the front. So it will most likely come assembled like that, pretty compact, and then you're just going to open the two top arms, bottom arms, and this is a full assemble front. Okay, let's put this on the side for now. We don't really need to use this just yet as well, so we'll put this on the side. We'll start from the gearbox. That's the first thing we need to start assembly. Now, in the gearbox, we'll have the big pulley already assembled to the hard drive, like so. You should have two different directions. It doesn't really matter, but it does help to keep the grease in properly. I'll show you later what I mean. But it's different directions. So like if you put one on the left, the arrow point up, and then with this on, sorry, this on the right and this on the left, always these, the herringbone always pointing up like that. So two of these are exactly the same. So if they're not, obviously you can always remove the screw and flip it over. So 1 and 2. Then you need bearings. You will need 2 NSK bearings, big NSK bearings like so. They are the 6707. And these bearings, we can install them into the hard drive. Then we take the other one. And we will install this one. Okay, now what we need to do at this point, we need to move all these screw, like this remaining from here to there, and then we can put this on the side. So obviously this is the old bulkhead, this is the new bulkhead. As you receive it, you're most likely going to receive it closed like so, just to take the least amount of space. It would be just closed like that. And then what you need to do is just open it up, nice and open, take this down, and just do that. That's it. Now, let's move this over here. To do so, you grab a Allen key, 4mm Allen key. Okay, one side it came loose. Now, to remove this is because you're losing both ways, so one will come loose, the other one, in this case, this side doesn't come loose. So we need to grab a multi-grip, maybe put a bit of tape around the multi-grip, So a bit of tape. Okay. No, not hard enough. A bit tighter. Okay. Put it on the side. Okay. Let's put this away. And this is done. Do the same thing for this side. Okay, at this point, you can put this away and you can start assembling all these other parts. You want to put a little bit of a thread lock there. We will probably put it at the end, so I won't install for now, just because this is just to keep in place this so it doesn't flop like so. So we're just going to keep it for now like this, hand tight, nothing special. Okay, then we put the other one. Remember, you got to put the thread locker after. This is for now just to keep in place. Makes your life easier when you install the shock and the knuckle. Beautiful. Okay, now we have this. It's in place. It's not moving. Now what we need to do next is put this on the side, and we can start do the same thing for the back. Okay, at this point we have the front bulkhead here. What we want to do, we want to install the knuckle over here. So we'll grab what you put on the side for the front, so not the drive shaft. Take 1 and 2. I can put this away. At this point, it's a good time to remove this part because we need to add an extra part to this knuckle, which actually will make quite a bit stronger. So at this point, we're just gonna remove it with our 4X, 4mm. And as I said before, we will reuse these two ends, the nut and the spring washer, but we won't use the X rod. So we'll put on the side like that, and we'll do it straight after this. Okay, put it there for now. Okay, at this point, we'll take this part, and you'll see it will fit right in there. And we use this M5 by 12 button heads. We need 4 of these. Beautiful. We'll put a drop of thread locker. Again, this is the same bottle that we was shipped with the board. I put it into the thread, not into the screw, just because it makes it less messy. And at this point, we need also a 3mm, a 3mm X. And what we'll do, we'll put the 2 holes, need to match these 2 holes. And instead of being a M6, we put a 5 M5 screw. So it won't thread onto the knuckle, but it will thread onto the reinforcement triangle, let's call it, or even spacer, knuckle spacer. If you do have a torque wrench, this you would tighten it at 40 inch-pound. But if you can see the back on the whiteboard, otherwise just tighten it to the point that gets a bit, good strength. And already put thread locker there. So same thing. You can see how this falls in. Okay. Beautiful. Now, the knuckle is being assembled with the knuckle spacer or reinforcement. And at this point, this is actually a good time also to test the bearings. These bearings are beautiful. Yeah, they're absolutely beautiful. So they don't need to be replaced. And at this stage, we can start assembly back to the bulkhead. Now, I would suggest to start with the bottom, just because it will make your life easier. You'll see why. So let's grab the custom screw. That's a custom M8 screw. So let's grab it. Next, we want to install the knuckle to the bulkhead. So what we do, or to the arms, I should say. So this is a custom M8 screw. It will go through like so, and then it would screw into the bottom of the knuckle. And you put it this side, facing out. The reason is this will connect to there, like that. Then you're going to put the nut. Okay, now what we want to do, we want to install the custom M8 screw into the bottom of the knuckle under here through the bottom arms. So first thing, use a lot of thread locker. Put a good amount. Okay. Make sure you put the knuckle with the spacer facing out. It's for this. Once I'll connect it here, I won't connect there. As you can see, this is too short. And before you tie the screw under there, let me put it like this. You have to put the nut, M8 nut. Okay. At this point, you tie it, and you tie this as well. Okay. Beautiful. Now, once these are tight, you want to have this easy enough to turn, but obviously, if you over tie it, it won't be easy. You need to put a lot of pressure to turn it. This case is beautiful. That's how you want it. Same thing for this side. Easy to turn. Okay. Let's tie it first. As you can see, I tied enough that I can still turn it pretty easy. I might tie it a bit more, but first let's put the nut. Let's put the nut. Okay, once these are completely in place, as you can see, I can turn. It's a little bit of resistance, but not too much. Same thing for this. Beautiful. Then what we want to do, we want to install the sex bolt with the taper washer. Now, the taper washer, they have to go facing inside. So like this, conical, going in, and the bigger side facing out. So let's just do that. And also this, we'll put it from the back. Okay, so now we need to install the sex bolt and the conical washers. The conical washers has to go facing inside, so it has to go with the conical side towards the rod end. It's always a bit easier to put something through like this and match the holes. One side is done. We can put this back in using the 4mm X. Drop of Loctite. Nice and tight. Beautiful. Again, conical facing in. Okay. If there's a bit of dirt, sometimes it can be hard. Okay, and let's install this as a last one. Same thing. This conical needs to face like this. Okay, and this is done now. This is completely assembled, tested it, make sure it's free. Beautiful. Beautiful. Okay, at this point, you want to move the old steering rods to the new steering rods. So you need to lose these two. One is left, one is right. And you install the new one. If it doesn't go like in this case, you probably have to flip it. Okay, it still doesn't go. Okay, yeah, it was just a little bit of power cord sometimes on the top of the thread. One. Put this in the parts that we can't use anymore. Two. And two. Done. And then what we'll do, we will install. We'll take the screw that you removed before. And then at this point, we take the two either side, so in total 4 in this case, M6 countersunk by 20. We'll take the spring washers. And what we'll do, we'll put this through the ball, just like that. Spring washer. And then in this case, for the front, we put at the bottom. You can put it however you like, but the default is exactly the same as your S2 is. There is no changes there. So if you had at the bottom, the front, put at the bottom. If at the back, you had at the bottom as well, or the top, or in the middle, just copy whatever you did before. My standard is the top, front, bottom, back at the front, bottom, rear, top. Okay, and now do the exact same thing on this side. Okay, and now the front is pretty much assembled. You just need to put the shock and this part here, but it's done. Okay, now what we need to do is we need to grab your drive shaft, put this away for now. You can work on one. Okay, now what we need to do here, we need to remove this old drive shaft. We can reuse the cap, we can reuse the inside, especially if it's still good. So, and obviously the caps themselves. So let's clear the old grease. Inspect the caps in case they do need to be replaced. In this case, these caps, they look perfectly. Okay. Like in this case, if it's a little bit tight, just help yourself with a little puncture. Or even use a multi-grip, like so. There we go. we want to reuse the boot, especially if it's not ripped or anything, like in this case. Let's cut off the zip tie here. You might have it, like not have it. Then we'll pull this out, and we'll put this away over here. Now, the next what we need to do, we need to remove the grab screw here. So try to give it a little twist. In this case, it's pretty easy. It was easy. If it was too hard, don't push too much pressure. Just use a flame, and then just break the thread lock pretty much. In this case, it's easy. Push the pin out, just like that, and this will fall. We will reuse this. We will reuse the barrel inside, that part there. We won't use this, so this will put away as a spare part, even if we can't use it for the new board. Okay, then we grab the new drive shaft, which is this one. It's quite a bit longer, and we do the same thing as we did now, opposite. So we install the, let's clear this first. Let's clear this first. It's a good idea to remove the grab screw, the old grab screw, so we can put a new drop of thread lock. And at this point, what we do, we put is a hole. There's one side of it, there is just a pin it can go through. There's one side that you can put the hole through like that. So just put this through, and this should move very easy, which is good. Then what we'll do, we'll grab the grab screw, and we'll put a tiny bit of thread lock, just a tiny drop, and we put it inside there. And we grab the other grab screw, and we do the same thing. Okay, I had enough residual in there. And at this point, we will put this back in. You need to tie a little bit more because otherwise it won't fit inside the cup. So just put a little bit more than what I did. At this point, you put this through. And obviously you need to, there is a hole in the barrel. You have to align with the hole of there. Once this is right in the middle, you can just tie the two grab screw. 1 and 2. Okay. It feels pretty good. If you feel like super tight, it's probably this ball is a little bit too big, so just remove it, and with a very thin sandpaper, just remove a little bit of tolerance on the in there, or on this ball of the drive shaft, or it might also be that you need to put a bit of grease inside there. So I didn't really clean it before, so there was enough grease in there to make it nice and smooth. Now, what I need to do is we can install the boot. Both boots like that. Probably a good idea to put gloves. Okay, and then as the last thing, we'll put the pin back in this. And because the cap is still good, can still be used. So we'll put this back inside like that. Just tap it in, make sure they are nice and squeezed to each other. And this is done. Now we want to put some grease, multi-purpose grease. You don't need to use fancy grease in this case because it's all steel. So usually CV joint grease for cars, it will be fine. Multi-purpose, as I said, lithium grease, it's fine. And at this point, just once you put the grease there, close these back up, and then it is ready to be installed. Let's keep to that. Okay, so now we start doing kit 2. What you should have received is pretty much all this stuff assembled to pretty much this level. And the only thing that you need to assemble at this point is the gearbox. You need to reuse the motors, so you need to change the shaft from the old one and put the new one. And then once you're done there, you're ready to install it to the gearbox. Then after that, This we prefer to install it after. The reason is because it is easier to access, especially for the first time, to this part here. But you can always do it, like, you can always open this like that and access the gearbox pretty easily as well. Okay, let's start. Okay, once you've done your change the shaft for the motors, next you need to grab the plate, the gearbox, which is where you're going to connect everything from the motor to the gear, and you're going to do the backlash as well from here. Once this is all set up, you can just slide it inside and close it up. That's it. Now, let's start doing this. Now, before we start, the motor has direction that will be more efficient to run. So there is a clockwise CCW and a clockwise CW. This view is from the back. So for example, this is a clockwise. You look at it from this way, and clockwise would be this way. Okay. Now remember that when you put the gears and everything, the wheel would spin in the opposite direction. Because the gear spins like, sorry, the motor spins like this, but the gears will start spinning like that. So don't look to the direction of the motor, or if you do, imagine that the clockwise need to go on the opposite side. To make it more simple, clockwise is left, counterclockwise goes to the right of the board. Now, let's start from the clockwise. Another thing, I'm not sure if it's possible to see here, but we can put something on the screen. Clockwise needs to face this direction, so you take the gear. As you can see, there are two different, they've been installed on two different sides. So the airframe one has a kind of like a direction, and so we pointing up like that. The clockwise, this has to go to the right, exactly like it's in there. If it's not, you can always remove the 6 screw and swap it around. But clockwise like this, so I know this is clockwise, it needs to match with that. And now this needs to match with this. Now, next thing, we said that clockwise needs to go to the left. So if this is the back of the board, or if I look at from this side, this is the back of the board, left will be here. Okay? So clockwise here, counterclockwise here. Then we said that this needs to go here. So let's start from this. Last thing, actually, that we want to make sure we do correctly is the wiring needs to go on either side. Depends on if it's on the left or on the right. So in this case, we want to put it on top of it. So on this corner of the plate. So we want to put it like so. The reason is then there's a little hole here, this hole here. So if you put it down, it will be very hard to bend the wire and go inside there. So you want to put it clockwise like so. Okay, now let's start putting this through. We reuse the M4 screws that we previously remove it from the plate. So let's grab those. M4 socket head. I'm pretty sure M4 by 10 socket head. Okay. And what we do is we already gonna put a little bit of thread lock, just a drop in there, just because. So before we do the backlash, as long as you do quickly enough that the thread lock doesn't set, it'll be fine. Otherwise, you have to remove and everything, put a thread lock, and it's a little bit extra step. So better just do it straight away. So I'm gonna drop. Okay. Now we said this has to go on this side. We just double check again. This goes to the left. Yeah, that's the left. So we want to go with the wiring over there. So over here we said we match the wiring there, and we match the 4 screw like so. And then we grab our 3mm X. And at this point, we just match to the 4 hole. Can't see the hole. Start from this. Okay, 1, 2. You want to put all 4, and you want to not completely tight them, but you want to secure them down. You want to have the plate kind of like not straight to the motor plate, because then when you put the gear, it might not be true. So what I'm doing now, I'm just going to put all this all the way down, and then I back it off a little bit. Okay. If you find, like in this case, a screw that is a little bit stripped, don't force it in. I mean, these are already been used. I'm going to replace this screw with a new one. There's really no point risking putting a stripped screw. Okay, and back it off. At this point, you should be able to move it. I can see when I do that, the motor moves inside the slots of the plate, even here. Okay, beautiful. Now, we said we'll double check again. Yeah, we said this is the direction. At this point, what we want to do, we want to match the gear. So as you can see now, this way it does match it. If you put it opposite, it won't match it. So don't grab the other one, just flip this over. So it needs to be like this. Then next, we grab the big bearing that goes over the drive. Then we put it the O-ring for dust and water. And at this point, what we want to do, we want to put this first a little bit. At the same time, match the half a moon, the flat part, with the flat part of the shaft. So this is the wrong way. As you can see, it's not really fitting in. Flip this around. Beautiful. And then we'll match this. At the same time, we'll match the hole inside there. It shouldn't be too tight. Just press it in. And at this point, it's very important when you look on the side that this is parallel to the plate. In cases like this or like that, when you go and squeeze them together to do the backlash, you find that it might not be true, because then once it goes straight, then actually it moves. So make sure that it's they are parallel. This part is parallel to there. At this point, it's pretty easy. You can do it with another person. You find it's a little bit hard to squeeze it. Mostly it's because this wiring is actually put a little touching there. But if you just squeeze it a little bit, you can see how the backlash actually comes closer. So what I normally do, I just put a bit of pressure on a table, put it together, and then I'll check that the backlash is correct. So I'm going to do it on this side. Okay. At this point, we can do two things. First is holding the motor and the motor pulley as well, the little one, and then trying to move it like this. If you feel like there is a very tiny bit of click, like movement, like very little or almost close to nothing, it's probably fine. We can double check with a different method. If you feel like it's like a click and this moves quite a bit, it's probably you have to lose the screw that you just tied, squeeze a little bit more, and then test it again. Again, very important, make sure that this is actually parallel to the plate. The pulley is parallel to the plate. Okay, let's then confirm that the backlash is correct with the second method. Okay, the method to test if the backlash is done correctly, we just say grab a little piece of paper, just like that. We don't fold it, so a single layer, and we put it through. It will come a little bit harder, obviously, because there's a bit more friction, but we want to make sure that it still goes through without too much effort, like in this case. If it rips apart a little bit, it's not a big problem. As long as you have a good marking of the teeth, it's probably correct. The reason why we didn't say we put it two is because if you put two and you put it through, you will feel like it's very hard and actually will rip apart the paper. So I'll do it with two, like put in two, cut in two, fold in two. And when I put it through, you can see how much harder I have to put it in. And actually, it will rip apart in a few different pieces, as you can see. So that's too much. So pretty much the goal here is to try to make it as close as possible to each other. But if you make it too close, you will notice, because then when you do free roll like this, it will feel like very hard to turn. Say like now, it just feels very smooth. Okay, so this backlash is done. Now before we set with the other two, I only screw these two. Before the other two they set, I'm gonna put this apart and tighten these two. Now to pull this apart, never use, for example, Allen key or anything under, especially the plastic or the POM gear, because you might damage it. So if you want to put any pressure, you put in here, but don't put it too much, because the gears are interlocking. That means that then you will put pressure on these teeth, and then these teeth can still crack. So the goal here is to just put a little bit of pressure like there, and then if this is sliding off, but this is not, you press it for underneath, like that. And then you just pull it together. Don't pull one at a time, or like if you pull one at a time, just a little bit up, and just work your way up. Don't just pull one, either one, because you will damage the teeth. Now, this has been removed. Great. At this point, we're going to tighten this. So we tighten this. And now the backlash here, it's all done. What we'll do, we're just going to put this back in. Again, it might be a little bit harder this time to slide this in compared to the first time, because now the backlash is a little bit tighter than what it was before, but it's still definitely possible. Start putting this through this hole, because it's the first thing you have to align. And then what you do, you put this down, align this face to the shaft, like so. And then at this point, same thing, don't press just one, you just press it together, down. And then you notice that there is still a little bit of gap going like between the plates and the gear. At this point, you can take your rubber hammer and just tap it in. It's just the bearing that it will fall in correctly inside the housing. Don't worry too much if it's still a bit of gap. The moment you're going to actually put it in the case, it will squeeze everything in and it will be good. Now, let's put this on the side and do the same thing for the right side, or the counterclockwise. Okay, now let's do the second motor, the counterclockwise, which will go to the right side. So we'll grab this again, right side, which is this one here. See from the back, that's the right side. So we want to go like so. So this is the outside, this is the inside, and the cable needs to go over here on this side. Then put this on the side. I'm gonna keep my index there. Put a bit of thread locker on all 4 screws, threads. At this point, I'm gonna keep the cable where my index was, and we're gonna put this through. Okay, 1, 2. Probably a good idea first to put like all 4, then squeeze it a little bit and back it off. So we make sure that, you know, they're all nice and aligned. Okay. Screw all the way in, and now back it off a little bit. Screw all the way in and back it off. All the way in and back. In and off. Okay, and you can, pretty easy, which is good. This point, then we do the exact same thing we did before. Bearing first. O-ring. And then we'll match it. So this is wrong, you can see, it doesn't go in. flip it, and it goes in. And then we'll match the face, the flat face, to the flat face of the shaft once again. Put this part first through. Okay, this case is not going super easy, so you can just use a little bit of tap it in. Probably didn't go very straight with the bearing. Not a big problem. Yeah, I'm not straight, so I'm gonna remove it again just because it makes sense to. So you can see, tap in there, move it here. Now this is a little bit higher, and tap this back. Okay. Do this again. Okay, now it's a little bit better. There's still quite a bit of gap, but doesn't matter for now. What it matters is that this is parallel to that, and this is, fitting properly. At this point, I'm not sure if it's very clear on the camera. There is a big, you can see if I hold this, there's a lot of movement. This backlash is way too big. There's a lot of movement here. Let me zoom it in actually. So the backlash here, it's huge, very big. So at this point, we'll try to squeeze these in. You can see already how much better it is. So I'm gonna put it against a table, edge of the table, squeeze it in, and then tie it there. Obviously, if you had another person, you can just do that, and then someone else tie it for you. So I'm just gonna do this. Make sure, again, this is parallel, very important. If it goes like that, it won't give you a true reading in a way. Yeah, so this is parallel. And you can see how now it's beautiful. There's a very minimal backlash. And if I spin it, spin very easy. Okay, this point, let's remove everything. So I'm going to tap it in a little bit from here. This is coming off. And then I'm going to pull it from there. Yeah. Better take your time doing this and damaging the this gear. It's already came off. Now sometimes it doesn't come off because the bearing side is still stuck, so you have to pull the bearing as well. So at this point, I can just tap it. This came off because I was already on the edge, and now you can tap a little bit harder. Put this back in place. And now we want to tighten these two. Okay. And now we put this back into place. This again through this hole. Okay, now is the fun part, which is grab your grease. And we need to start greasing the gears before we install them into the gearbox. Now, we strongly recommend to use only synthetic grease. The reason is because lithium grease or multi-purpose grease over time can eat the actual POM plastic gear. So especially if you don't want to service every so often, just spend some extra money and get some good grease. We use Mobil 1, which is probably the best grease that you can get. if you're not sure, if you can't get this, you can just go to any bike store. As an example, in Australia, we have 99 bikes. You can just go there and say, I've got a plastic gear inside. What do you guys use for your mid-drive bikes? And they will recommend you to use something very similar to what we're using here. Anyway, eBay, Amazon, you should get this pretty easy. This is more than enough for this, put these two, so you can get even a smaller size, it's even better, but otherwise, it's definitely a good thing to have that. Now, I put it in here, so I don't need to use that cartridge for now. So what I'll do, I will start putting the grease around. We put it a good amount. It's better have a little bit more than a little bit less. Again, it just reduce your servicing periods. So more there is, better actually it is for the gear. In this case, because everything is locked, you can push it in a little bit more. I can see the bearing hasn't really fallen all the way into the housing. Okay. Okay, we've done number one. Now we're going to do the other side. Oh, I think it starts to be finished this. Yeah, I can hear it's finished. Okay, old method. Pop this open. Use your finger. Now, we will need to use our finger anyway, even if you have a grease gun, because we want to make sure that the grease goes inside all the teeth and there is no air inside. So I'm just going to go through. If this is too big, once you're going to put it through the gearbox, it's just going to go outside. So make sure that you just do what I'm doing, like put it inside. You can put some extra on the corners. Okay, at this point, we do the same thing. Put this in. Make sure that the bearings that's inside the housing falls in all the way in. Make sure the gear is actually straight. Now, this side goes to this side. Okay, this goes this side, this goes to the opposite side. We do the same thing here. So make sure that all the grease is nicely spread evenly. I will zoom in and show you what I mean. Okay, so as you can see here, when you push it in, make sure there is no gaps, like air gaps. So as an example, the remover, you can see on this spot here, there is there is no grease on top of it. So you just spread it on top of it, and you make sure that there is no air gaps. This is a really good example. Over here, it's evenly spread inside, and also if you look at from this view, you can see how it's full of grease inside the teeth. Okay, at this point, what we do, we have to install the bearings, 6001 bearings inside. And you can put a little bit of extra inside here. I mean, it doesn't hurt. Same thing as I said before, better a little bit more than a little bit less. Spread around all the housing. I usually wipe my fingers off on the edge. Okay, now let's find the 6001 bearings and we can install them in there. Here's the bearings. We'll put it through. Beautiful. They will slide in pretty easily. And at this point, before we put the gear into the case, I'll suggest to put a little bit of thread lock in there. It's actually the opposite. I was looking upside down. Yeah, I was looking upside down. It's actually from your view, this is the correct side. Because this part needs to go up, upside down. the wire will come out of this and will go down. If you try to do the opposite, the bend is too big and it will be very hard to do it. So make sure the wire comes up, it will fall down in there. Now, before we do anything, it's easier to install the wiring through. Okay, and now at this point, we need to push this in. Like so. And you can see how the bearing inside will fall inside the back side of the hard drive. At this point, this is in. We grab our 4 M5 button heads by 12, and we just put it inside there. You might have to slide off a little bit the plate just to align the holes. Okay, 1, 2. Now it's pretty hard not to tighten this, it's full of grease. So we'll grab the socket. Okay, now we've done number 1. Let's do number 2. We'll do the same thing. We'll grease it. You can skip this, but as I said, better more than less. Your gear will last longer. It's just an extra little step. Okay, then let's put the bearing. Put the bearing like so. Fit in pretty easily. And we'll put the cable first. At this point, we align the gearbox. I forgot. First, put a little bit of thread lock into the gear case. Yep, good. At this point, we grab the 4 M5 by 12 button heads. When you do these sort of things, always make sure you do cross. So you put like one opposite. Okay. Beautiful. Now when you spin, it might feel a little bit harder to spin. This is just the grease that it's kind of like keeping a bit more friction to it. But as long as you don't feel like it's like scraping or anything, everything feels it will be good. Beautiful. Now we install the gearbox. At this point, we can get rid of our gloves. Let's take this out. The shot and as well as the gun. And it's probably a good time to give a clean to all the residual of the grease so you don't get dirty. You probably have to clean all around here. It's a good time. It's also a good thing to clean it just because otherwise dirt, when you start riding dirt, it will get stuck to it and it's never nice. So just go around, give a wipe with a dry towel. Might be hard to remove completely everything. Beautiful. Okay, now at this point we have installed all of these. We want to install the arms to the bulkhead, to the frame. Now, as I said, we'll see how you receive it. You might receive already the bottom arms already assembled with this, and then you just put this on top of it. We'll see what makes more sense in terms of shipping. But this is the whole process. So just in case it does comes like that. No, now we'll have bushings in through, brass bushings in through there. Usually a press fit, so they shouldn't fall out. But if you don't see them, just in case they have fall out during the shipping, just put it back in. Now, what we do, we grab our shutter bolt. And obviously, let's put this way. So the steering arm will go on this side. And you're going to drop it in, just like so. I already put a good amount of thread locker. And you can screw it in. Okay, put one, then put the other one. Put a good amount of thread locker in this. It's a big screw, so even if you have to put a bit more force to later on remove it, let me turn around so you can see. Beautiful. You tighten it to the point that gets a little bit, you feel a bit of pressure, and then you make sure that this is free. If you tie it very hard, you feel like this is like it won't be smooth, and this, you can see how that's how you want it. Okay, even if it doesn't feel like you tie it too hard, once the thread lock will set, it will actually then will keep it in place. So as I said, just put a little bit of force, but not too much. If you do it too much, you can also do this a few times, and it will wear the paint, and the bushing then will go in place, and it will come a lot smoother. But it would be ideal to have it already quite smooth, like so. Now, at this point, we do the other side as well. We can also put this. Actually, no, don't put this yet, because we need to put the drive shaft in this case. So I'm just going to put the other side. Like that. Okay, I'll do the other side. And let's start this one as well. Okay. It's a little bit hard. There might be a bit of extra power cord on the thread. So just back it off, put it back in. Like in this case, it's going to be too hard. So I'm just going to back it off and put it back in. Okay, let's back it off again. sure this is actually straight as well. Okay, now this is done. Again, it's beautiful. Feels very nice. And at this point, we can put these on the side because we have to install the drive shaft. So let's grab the drive shafts before we close these up, because then you won't be able to install the drive shaft. Okay, now we have our 2 drive shafts. We have our real bulkhead. At this point, we need to just install the drive shaft inside their drive and then connect everything back up, and then this is done. So let's grab our grease. In this case, I'm going to use a Teflon grease for the caps as well. You can use the same grease as you're using for this, for inside here. I'm going to use the white one. This is different, slightly different, but you need to buy a different one. Just use the same as you're using for the gears. Same reason is because this material is the same as the big gear. So if you use multi-purpose grease, I use multi-purpose grease inside here, which this one here. But again, this is aluminium, this is POM, so we want to make it last as long as possible. So what I normally do, I use this as a like a spoon, and I put it in, so I don't need to use my finger. And then at this point, I might grab a little bit more, like so. And it would be easier to put this through first because you have to align the 2 bearings and the rings between the bearings. So it's easier actually to put this through first. Okay, it went through. Sometimes it can be a little bit hard, especially if tolerance is quite fine, especially if it's a brand new, like in this case, axle. Okay, and at this point, we want to match the caps into the slot. So you see, you got. Let me turn this around. Put this down like this. Now, we got the slot over there, I can see. And then we'll put it in, just like that. Okay, once that is done, I'll suggest to, once that is done, I'll suggest to connect this like that, so at least this won't fall out. So let's do this first. Now, let's grab this. Again, put a good amount of thread lock. I'm going to turn around. It's pretty hard to do it in this view. Don't put all the way in, just because it's easier to move this around. Again, you tight it. Don't over tight it. You still want to make sure that this is pretty smooth. Obviously, we get harder because there is now more and more friction, but don't worry, as long as it's smooth, it doesn't feel like it's stuck, then obviously probably you tight this too much. Okay, now this side is done. We do the exact same thing for the opposite side. Put this down. We'll grab, there we go. Same thing. We use this as a spoon. Good amount. Again, be generous, better more than less. Doesn't hurt if it's too much. And then I grab a little bit more. So in this case, we got the rings there. It's not completely aligned with the 2 bearings. So if you see the bearings like so. You see the bearings falling out. So we want to make sure that their ring is the spacer. We want to make sure that the spacer is falling in. It's aligned. Probably the best way is to put this vertical, align. I'm going to do it like that. Okay. This is in. I have too many layers. Stay down so you can see. Now, that's in. We do the exact same thing. We'll find the slots are for the plastic caps. I can see it where they are. You can spin them also. There we go. Okay. It might feel a bit hard just because the air, it's kind of like getting stuck with the grease. So you've like kind of like grease coming out. Sorry, air coming out. Just because it's almost sealed. And at this point, we do the exact same thing we did for the other one. So we install the top arms, and this way, this will not fall out. Again, be generous with the thread locker. Try to not put it on the bushings. That's the only thing I would say to avoid as much as possible. So for example, what I just did, I just blow it so it goes evenly around the thread, just to be on top of on one side. You'll see as you put it on what I mean. I'm going to turn this around. It's easier for me. The first is always a little bit harder to get alignment, so you might have to push it in a little bit. There we go. Got it. And then we do the alignment for the other one before we tighten that, as we did previously. You can also use a little Allen key to give a bit of leverage. Just be aware of the thread down there. It's not really gonna. There we go. Beautiful. That's it. Now, let's get rid of this and let's test. This is pretty good. Okay, this is a little bit tighter. It does feel quite a bit tighter, but it already is coming looser. Beautiful. Now, last thing is we're gonna have to install this. So at least this is completely secure. You can see this can move easily. So we do the alignment at the end once it's on with the deck and everything. So based on your weight, so don't worry about that. Just make sure you line to these two holes. So let's grab the M6 by 6 by 20 countersunk and 2 spring washers, 1 and 2. And let me grab the M6, which is okay, 1 and 2. Put thread locker. Always a bit of thread locker. Your drop. 1 and 2. Let me put first the screw, then spring washer, and then we'll tie it to the bulkhead, the main frame. Okay, I'll tie it after. So screw again, underneath spring washer, and then we tie it. Always make sure that it goes in straight. Don't force it in if it doesn't go straight. If it feels hard the first few turns, it's probably because it's not straight. Always a good idea to thread it first with a hand. Okay. This feels nice. At this point, you can already close this with a zip tie, a very small zip tie with a small head, or we use some steel wire. And just because the clearance between the outdrive and the motor, it's pretty small, so if you use a steel wire and just twist it, it's actually, you can reuse it as well. So with a zip tie, you have to cut it and always put a new one. With that, you just like twist it, it opens up like a cable, like example, the steel wire that is used in cabling. So at this point, we'll close this up. And this is done. Now, if you reach to this point and everything's going as it should, you have done the hard part. From now on, it's pretty simple and straightforward. But obviously, keep watching the video. We'll explain still how everything is. But this, the hard part, it's done. All this now can already go into the box, or you can do it now, you can do it after. I'll keep assembling the entire thing, and then I'll put last thing into the box. Now, what is missing at this point? The only thing is missing is the shock. So we'll grab the shock, and we'll install everything back together. Let's do that. Okay, now let's install the shock. Pretty straightforward. Grab your shock, put it inside here, and we'll put the shoulder bolt. Sorry, sex bolt. One. Do it always from the inside, so you can put the nice color washer. Okay, beautiful. At this point, we put the M10, the shorter one that you remove it from here, M6 by 10 kind of sunk. Put a bit of thread locker, as always. A drop, it's fine. Grab your 12, your socket. Okay. Okay. Now this is done, and we put this on the side, and we can then do the front as well. Right. Now, if you got to this point, this will be the equivalent for a kit 3. So the back is fully assembled, the front is fully assembled. We just need to put it back to our chassis box. So the easiest things will be to flip around so we can access all the 4 screws underneath. In this case, there is silicone previously still in here, so I'm not going to add more silicone. If it's all gone, it's a good idea to put a bit of silicone just to help preventing water to get inside the chassis. So I'm going to use some thin boxes like so. 1 and 2. Flip it around. And obviously, make sure you flip these as well. We'll start from the front. So before we start, we'll put a little bit of thread lock. At this point, we will start putting these together. So I'm just going to put it in like so. And we'll grab the same screw as we grabbed before. I'm going to use this. You can do it by hand, however you prefer. If you do use the drill, always make sure you first, I think it's this one here. Yep. If you use the drill, make sure that first you do it by hand. Just to start the threads, you don't want to start. Just take all these out. Okay, this keeps in place. Okay, probably better to do this so it pulls it up. Okay. There we go. Okay, now what we want to do, we want to install this reinforcement plate. I'll remove this protective layer. And what we'll do, if you have a bash plate like this, it might be a little bit harder because it's obviously designed to go straight onto there, but you can put on top of it. So in this case, put a bit of thread lock also on these 2 screws. And try to use the longer one if you have any longer screw. Okay. Okay. And then we grab the same old M5 by 12. Again, if you feel like it gets to be too hard, just remove it. It might be a little bit of power cord and put it back in. Okay, leave it like that for now. Okay. And now we do the back as well. So probably it's a good idea to move a little bit towards like that. Let's flip it. First thing, we'll put a bit of thread lock on all the holes. And we'll match it. These will be a little bit harder because obviously there's some wiring. Make sure you don't crimp the wiring into the between the bulkhead, like it's happening here. If you have someone else, give you a hand, probably a good idea, just to ask them, just to help you to hold them so you can align all the holes. There was a little bit of silicone. Okay, as you can see, first start by hand. Okay, at this point we can put it on the other one. And this one here. Okay, same thing. If you have the bash plate, like in this case, you can try to cut it and try to make it fit. There are 3 holes over here. They don't quite align with the holes originally were there. You can give it a go. You also need to cut some of these off because the arms now are a little bit quite a bit shorter. Honestly, I wouldn't use it. This makes sense when the belt was there. Now we don't have any belts. The motor are quite high under the chassis box anyway. So just use this. You must use this. This is part of structure. So it's not just for protecting cabling or things around there. So yeah, just make sure you do use this. Okay, grab 2 and 5. Screw these up back up, all that, and then this is done. We can flip the board around. Okay, at this point, we are pretty much done. We just need to do whatever we did opposite. So we need to reconnect the motors. Make sure you connect the right motor to the right ESCs, left motor to the left ESC, run the front light, and you'll see I might put actually a view of what goes to where. And then the last thing, which is can be a little bit of time consuming. You need to be very careful. We need to grab the deck, and we need to stick the layout for making the cut because the new board is quite a bit shorter. So let me grab the deck. So here's the deck. As you can see, it's quite a bit longer. All these holes over here are all true. They will be exactly the same. What we need to do, we need to just chop a little bit here, pretty much, and drill 2 new holes. Now, I'll show you how to connect the the sticker to then follow with a jigsaw or anything. Just follow there and to cut these off. Okay, let's put this away. Okay, with any kit, unless obviously you got the deck, you will receive a print like this. So in this case, there are two different papers, but yours will be a whole single sticker. So what we want to do is we want to remove this sticker. If I can do it. And there is a line that says match this line. So we want to match this line up here. Okay. So you can see I matched the line up here, and then these lines as well match pretty good with the deck cutout. And at this point, what we want to do, we want to get our jigsaw and follow this line here. It might be a good idea to first do a little hole where these are, just because when you cut these through, sometimes this does move, like you push it out. So then when you drill this, actually it's going to be misaligned. I will suggest to do a very little hole. You do the big hole at the end once this is cut, and you just put it with the board. Just because, I mean, could be some misalignment with how you place it and this. So just make a little hole, go and check there is a line then with the bulkhead. And if it is, make it a 6 mil. If it's not, try to move it whatever it needs to be, and then make a big hole. Okay, I'll do the same thing for the back. Just fast forward these marks. So. Okay, the second one is done as well. Try to match this as much as possible. And now it's time to go and cut it. Once you cut this, we suggest to use a belt sander or a filer just to round the edges of the cut like this. And as a last thing is just get a bit of varnish and varnish the edge, because it'll be bare wood, so it will help to protect the actual wood, the deck, from water or anything to enter the different layers. Okay, let's cut.